Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but again, the debate is pointless with people that have no integrity. So, yes, they just evade the argument, just keep evading the argument, keep evading the argument. So anyway, these are comments that I did leave because they went to the trouble to write some crap, but it's just that absolute crap. So I'll respond to their comments and post a link to this video debunking or pointing out the crap of the comment. Alright, so this is the subject of the lever. Alright, so let me just draw it real quick, and to illustrate the paradox, you could call it. I don't see anything wrong with calling it a paradox. It just makes a mockery of any notion that mv squared has anything to do with reality. So I hang a lever, alright, and the fact is I put no weights on it. It'll oscillate, okay, hundreds of times. It'll go up and down. So I can poke a little bit of energy in, and the two sides will basically equal each other in gravity. And the only thing, okay, that's actually changing is that each time the lever moves, it shoves a little tiny bit of mass to one side. So every time it moves up, that side gains a little bit of mass because of the angle, okay, from the normal. So you've changed the angle from the normal line to some other line, and you've shoved a little bit of mass up into one side. And that's really what's switching sides, is the mass. So you're putting a little mass on this side, it overshoots, the mass ends up on this side, it overshoots, the mass ends up, and that's all that's happening. So when we put weights on here, okay, if it still oscillates exactly the same with the weights on it, then we know those two weights are the same energy. So the simple argument is that I can have a one mass at four distances, or a four mass at one distance, and I'll get a lever that works perfectly. So it basically is saying overtly, the lever, the balance, is saying as an absolute truth, pretty much. I mean, thousands of years, people measure their gold with this. I mean, it works, okay, that a one mass moving four velocity is the same energy pushed up and pushed down in gravity, moved in gravity. It's the same, collects the same of gravitational force. It's equal, okay, to a four mass moving one velocity, not two velocity, one, not two, not a two mass here. So, and the kinetic energy theory says these two things are not equal. Okay, it clearly is basically saying that this has twice 2x the energy because of this squared velocity. Well, it's 4x the energy, actually. So they're saying this has 4x the energy that this has. I'm going to use the word energy, right? So this whole idea of what, you know, they've stolen the word energy to imply kinetic energy and not momentum. And anybody who lives in the real world, the mechanical world, knows that momentum is energy. So it's just kind of silly to say one is, you know, and one isn't. That's nonsense. So that's unfortunate that if Newton was alive and could have defended himself through the last 300 years, perhaps we would be using the word energy to signify just this simple truth: mass moving a velocity. That's how you have energy. Stuffing has to have a mass and has to have a velocity, then it can bang into things and move them. It can transfer its energy, and that's all that's transferred is momentum. It's in the electrical wire, it's in the photons, it's everywhere, and it's a consistent way you can do this transfer. And kinetic energy theory, 1/2 mv squared, just makes an absolute mockery of the truth. It just makes an absolute mess. Breaks something that wasn't broken. It breaks it. It doesn't make it, it breaks it. In every single way. And that's why there's zero evidence of it. Can't ever collect this kinetic energy. And it does something as paradoxical as this, saying the lever is lying. Somehow I 4 times the energy on one side of an oscillator. So when this side is going down, there's 4 times the energy. When it's going up, there's 4 times the energy of what's on the other side of the lever. And we know that can't be true. So, and so instead of just conceding, yes, this is a problem, you really can't have this, conflict with this basic device. And there's nowhere for the energy to be hidden. There's nowhere where the energy is being used up. That's why it oscillates 100 times, because it has a very efficient fulcrum, and it's just switching that mass back and forth, and it's doing it very efficiently. So there's no hidden way you could have 4 times the energy in one motion and 1 unit of energy on the other side of the lever. They have to have the same energy. It's an absolute proof, and this is the garbage I get as comments. So I'm just saying, there's just no point in talking to people. These are belligerently religious people. They will not let go of their Catholicism. So, Mr. Who? These systems work by balancing torque. It doesn't matter. The torque is being created by the velocity of the mass. So when there's no weights on the lever, it's the velocity of this side equals the velocity of the other side. Just a fact. Matter for matter, they're all equal. And the only way I can keep the oscillator oscillating is that I have to maintain that balance. I have to maintain that equality. And it's clearly saying that I can add 1 mass at 4 velocity, and it will equal 4 mass at 1 velocity. It's overtly, clearly saying it, and there's no energy change in the lever. All right, the effective force on both sides, as you correctly say, the weight of X arbitrary units and Y. So all of this, we know that it's the only reason why the distance makes any difference is because it's going to change the velocity. It's going to change the momentum of the weight. There's no point in talking about this as if the distance is momentum. The distance isn't the momentum. The momentum is the velocity you have to move it at. And the fact is, you need a 4 pound going 1 velocity, okay, to equal the momentum of a 1 mass going 4 velocity. That's because the torques calculated as the product of the mass and the distance from the pivot are equal, because whatever. It's just irrelevant. All that matters, the real physics is the things are moving. I mean, they're just ignoring the real physics and pretending this is about a mathematical equation, when it's about real things moving. It's about a real elephant and a real mouse. Okay, and if I make the mouse go fast enough, it can have as much energy as the elephant. So velocity doesn't factor into the equation for levers. So I'm just going to, I should just stop reading right there, because that's just an absolute nonsense. We know that if the weights weren't attached and I stopped the motion of the lever, we know they have these momentums. So it's just absolute nonsense to talk like the velocity is irrelevant. The velocity is the entire creation of the energy. You have to move something for it to have energy. You can't have energy just sitting there. Amazing nonsense. What matters is force and distance from the pivot. It's just baby talk. It is only tangentially related because forces cause acceleration. And they're equal forces is the point. It's the 4 mass going 1 velocity is collecting as much gravity as the 1 mass going 4 velocity. That's what the thing is absolutely saying. Those 2 gravitational potentials are exactly the same. Those 2 collecting units are exactly the same. You collect the same number, the same percentage, the same quantity of gravity. All right. Velocity itself isn't a useful quantity when dealing with levers. Amazing nonsense. It's the entire function is the angular momentum trapped that you can trap in the lever. It's the entire function. Okay. Yeah, you are taking the product of the velocity and the mass, i.e. momentum. Yeah, duh. And noting that these 2 values are the same for a balanced oscillating system. I'm saying that the lever is a balance. It's telling you what 2 values equal each other. You can put 2 things on there. An elephant moving 1 velocity and a mouse moving 50 velocity, or 150, or whatever, 568. And the fact is, those 2 things will equal each other in terms of how much energy is required to propel them to those velocities. So, and nothing that these two values are the same for a balanced oscillating system. Yes, they have to be the same. It's not that they are. They have to be. This is, of course, true because conservation of momentum. So this is just more nonsense. Okay, it isn't really relevant to the discussion. So amazing nonsense. But putting conservation of momentum aside, I don't understand. Why would you put it aside? You just said you have to do it, and then you say, well, let's just put it aside. Why would I do that? Another reason why the product of the mass and the velocity in the balance is because velocity is directly linearly proportional to distance. So again, they just keep saying this nonsense. We already know their velocities. We already know that one of them has to be 4 times the other one. So what is this nonsense? Okay. The mass is directly linearly proportional to the force. So again, you say so. All right. So by default, when the product of the distance and the mass on both sides of the pivot are balanced, then the product, absolute velocity and mass, will also be balanced. So again, you're not explaining how your kinetic energy theory says there's 4 times as much energy on one side. 4 times. Why don't I see it? Where is this energy? If it exists, where is it? What's it doing right now? So when the lever is perfectly oscillating with 4 times the energy out there, what's the energy doing? It's obviously not moving the lever. So what's it doing? All right. In other words, we know that the product of the force and the distance are in balance. So he just keeps doing it. There's just no, there's no point, like I said, in arguing with people who don't think the actual thing that's happening in the lever is there's real momentums moving. Real objects are moving. Okay. I think we're both in agreement there. Force is equal to the mass times acceleration. So again, you're saying so. So again, it's not Newton's formula, and acceleration is a velocity. It isn't anything else. You're just adding a velocity. There's nothing special about an acceleration. It's just a change in velocity, or it's just the addition of a velocity. Velocity is equal to distance times some constant. So the constant being what in this case? It's gravity. All right. So where's the end of his parentheses? So he opens a parentheses and doesn't close it. Okay. Well, whatever. All right. A constant each snapshot in time. We don't need to do this snapshot in time stuff. It's a very simple observation. One is going 4 times the velocity of the other in every single moment. So at every single moment, every single movement, one of them goes 4 times the velocity the other one goes. But concurrently, the constant is the same for both sides of the lever, hence why I'm calling it a constant. I don't know what that could possibly mean. Let's call it Z. Oh, whatever. Fuck you. I mean, this is just too silly. Okay, the constant is... Okay, we're not doing this constant crap. It's just absolute nonsense. Obviously, one side collects force against gravity and collects force going as gravity pushes on it. All right, and the point is that I can balance it without putting any energy in. The two objects balance because it takes exactly the same gravitational force to move the objects. One of them has to be moved 4 times the speed. One of them has to be moved 1 unit of velocity. And the fact is those two combinations add up to a dead zero, and that's why it doesn't move from that center balance. As you say in the video, the system is not losing and then regaining energy. Well, clearly you're saying it does. And that's what you have to defend, retard. Okay, the energy is not being moved from one side to side. So it clearly is. That's a fact. That's how oscillators work. So unless you refine that statement, you're wrong. The fact is more mass goes up in gravity on one side. It's heavier. It's going to get pushed down more. And that's why it goes down. So it's just a fact that the oscillator is moving the mass from one side to the other. The system's energy just oscillates between kinetic energy and potential energy. So that's just absolute nonsense. So we know there's no potential energy. Okay, nothing has energy. It just has a force of being applied to it. They both are in free space They're not going to fall a specific distance. None of that crap has any relevance to this whatsoever. The fact is they're going to be pushed an equal amount by the two forces, and the only thing that's really switching sides is that little bit of mass in the lever. That's the only energy in the system. The only energy that's changing. Okay. You yourself would agree that the system has no kinetic energy when it is stationary. So I wouldn't agree. I don't agree there's any such thing as kinetic energy. So you have to say something like momentum. And I'm going to argue that there's plenty of momentum. I'm being pushed into the ground constantly. The ground is constantly pushing me back up. That's why I can feel sitting down. I can feel it right now. I can feel the earth pushing me back up. I'm obviously still moving. I assume at the peak of each oscillation, so both of us are talking about kinetic energy and potential energy transferring. Now, I'm never going to talk about potential energy where you're going to tell me that a boat has potential energy because it's on the side of a stream. The only thing giving the objects anything forcing them to do something is gravity, and the simple argument is the lever balances gravitational force, and it's saying how quite clearly it takes the same gravitational force to move a 1 mass 4 velocity as it does to move a 4 mass 1 velocity. It's overtly saying that's exactly the same gravitational force. So to answer your question, so there was no answer. The reason why the lever is tricking you is because you're incorrectly thinking that the kinetic energy on both sides needs to be balanced. So he's saying an oscillator doesn't have to have balanced energy, which on its face is just absolute nonsense. So there's no possible way an oscillator can work, bam, 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 if it goes, bam, 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 and obviously the lever wasn't doing that. The lever is showing no evidence that there's any imbalance. Okay, it is not kinetic energy that needs to be balanced. So there's no way to argue this complete violation of every sensible notion in physics. Okay, so yes, so he's thrown the baby out and he's hugging the bathwater. It is the torque that needs to be balanced. And the momentum is conserved. So just absolute nonsense. Of course the momentum is conserved because that's the only thing that's in the damn lever. And there's zero evidence of anything called the kinetic energy anywhere. Zero evidence of its existence in the experiment. The experiment is showing you exactly what you're seeing. As I'm telling you, you can watch the mass switch sides. You can watch it happening as the lever moves. You can watch the mass switching sides. All right. So we know what's in the experiment, and there's absolutely no evidence of any special spiritual energy. Okay, so he said edit, see comment, thinks, well, fuck you. So I will post this time code. But it's just crap, right? I mean, this is crap. You simply point out that here's a lever. It's this reliable device for balancing energies and balancing weights. And you're going to pretend that your energy doesn't have to show up. It doesn't have to make an appearance. It can be hidden, secret energy. God, you people are just such pieces of suck. Alright, TLD, whatever. A scale does not compare kinetic energies. There is no kinetic energy, so there's no way to compare them anyway, but the clear argument is the scale is saying momentum is real. And it's saying, what's kinetic energy? Where is it? What does it do? You have some theory? That's what it's saying. It's clearly evidence against the theory that there's any such thing as kinetic energy. The lever is saying what equals what. And those two equalities don't match. Your claim of what energies match isn't showing itself in the lever. It's a direct piece of conflicting evidence, and you're taking no responsibility for that. It compares forces. Well, that's sort of true, but it's comparing the forces as collected by two different objects, which can exist with or without motion. So I don't believe that. So I don't know what force you could possibly put where you could say it has a relevant force. I mean, I could put uranium on the lever, and then make some argument that it's, the fact that it's shooting out a few protons and electrons now and then means that I have to account for that as part of the lever's function, when we know that's not going to be relevant. So that's just nonsense, right? We're not talking about its chemical energy. We're talking about its motional energy. All right. It's similar to the famous where $1 extra. Where's $1 extra riddle, where quantities are subtracted when they are supposed to be added. Who cares? All these word games. The two energies. What the fuck is this? What are two energies you're talking about? At the two sides of the scale are supposed to be added. Why would you add the energies? They're being created by opposite directional forces. It's clearly opposite directional forces. One is moving against gravity, one is moving with gravity. It's just absolutely idiotic to say they're going the same way. They're really not. And they don't rotate, they stop. It's just so, again, this is the baby talk. These assholes are now going to try to argue that this motion is the two sides are moving the same direction, when obviously they're not. Okay, then from one another, and being surprised that the result is zero does not have any physical meaning. Your comment has no meaning as anything a rational person would post. Okay, let's see. I ask myself if it even makes sense to consider two objects on opposite sides of a lever as having any downward velocity. So they're moving downward and they come to a stop, and then they move upward and come to a stop, and then they move downward and come to a stop. And these assholes are going to say they don't have any momentum up, and they don't have any momentum down. Amazing. All right, from my mathematical understanding of velocity, see, it's just... So they really are just destroying math now, too. They're going to insult math as if math somehow explains why levers can't see kinetic energy. All right, it corresponds to the change of height over time, meaning that both masses have a velocity, both of them must be displaced. So again, we already know their velocities. We can see them. We can measure them. It's obvious. And we know as an absolute fact that the one mass at 4 times the distance is going 4 times the velocity all the time. No matter what speed this one's going 4 times as fast. If this setup were a reality, can you get much simpler as a setup? So again, a 5,000, 10,000 year old tool, and he's going to talk about the setup being flawed. It would mean that after an infinitesimal amount of time period, the lever would be bent on both sides, which is absurd. So who says that? So just absolute nonsense again. But what do I know? Exactly. This is some jackass called Jelly Math. Waste of my goddamn time, that is for sure. Alright, so this asshole, Kinetic. Right. When I was in school, the teacher had a metal box and 2 lengths of string. One length of, so I did read this before, but anyway, metal nuts equal distance tied to it. And then, yes, they do this in lots of ways. You can do it with a stick and drop that. Lots of visual ways to see that things accelerate. So what? It's going faster. What is that? How does this mean anything? Amazing. I mean, how does it mean anything that we didn't know because Galileo already did all this stuff? This isn't a surprise. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay. Then the teacher held that string extended and dropped into a metal box. Guess what? Yes, guess what? It's saying nothing about this controversy between kinetic energy, mv squared, and momentum, mv. That's the subject, is the conflict between those two silly, the silly notion that somehow those two things are compatible when they're saying exactly different equalities. You can't use both of them and land successfully on the moon. Absolute fact. Guess what? The clanging of the nuts hitting the box sped up, and the nuts were hitting the box at an increased speed. Yeah, Galileo used bells. So he put things on a ramp, used bells to go off so he could judge how fast the objects were moving. And he could slow down gravity, essentially. So now he could take gravity, make it work slower over an extended period of time, and see what the proportions were. All right. The other length of string also had metal nuts tied to it, but at an increasing distance, increasing the factor by 4. Guess what? The clanging did when the nuts hit the... I mean, what is this baby talk? Who could give a shit? Yeah, obviously it didn't speed up. The clanging did not speed up or slow down, so the nuts were hitting the box at a constant speed. So again, this is old Galileo stuff. I'm just going to delete this because this is just too ridiculous. This is 400-year-old physics, okay? We all don't need that instruction, you fucktard. I mean, alright, back interruption and such. Alright, so this is the Zip It Pop or something, I don't know, stupid screen name again. I don't understand what you mean by the sentence 1/2 v squared can't be right. I'm saying it's absolute nonsense. It's not like it's not right. It's made up garbage. It's worse than a Holy Ghost, frankly. It's a useless pile of nothing mush. The very idea of a velocity squared has no geometry. It has no... How could you possibly think a velocity squared could be relevant in the universe somehow? It has no dimensionality. You can't square something that has no dimensionality. A velocity does not have a dimensionality. It's a one-dimensional thing, a velocity. All right, anyway. 1/2 mv squared is the formula for kinetic energy. Wow, you figured that out on your own. And the point of all of these videos that are clearly titled and clearly argued is that it's crap. It's a nonsense theory. It's flat fucking earth nonsense. Are you trying to say that you think 1/2 mv squared is not the correct formula for kinetic energy? I'm saying there's no such thing as kinetic energy. There's just momentum. And that's all there is in the universe. That's energy in the universe, is having a mass and having a velocity. And that's it. There's nothing else. There's no other rational definition of anything we would call energy. Energy is just motion, and the only part of the motion that matters is how much mass is moving. Alright, regarding why the lever has the one mass object moving 4 velocity and the 4 mass object moving 1 velocity, we know why it does. Okay. It's because the conservation of momentum. Yes, the two things are collecting the same exact amount of gravitational force. That's the absolute fact. All right, momentum is mass multiplied by velocity. You're just wasting everyone's time. Velocity pointed up is typically considered positive, and velocity pointed down is typically considered negative. So what's the point? Again, the point is your theory says there's 4 times the energy on one side of the oscillator than the other side of the oscillator. Explain how 4 times the energy can have absolutely no effect on the oscillator. All right. The two masses connected by the lever have 0 total momentum. So again, you can say this nonsense when I can see them moving. So go ahead and say nothing's happening here. There's no energy. There's nothing to see here except the moving parts. I mean, so again, just points out how their physics is such nonsense. I mean, this is like, oh, the Holy Ghost married Satan, and that's why there is a Holy Ghost in the story. You see, the Holy Ghost would be totally irrelevant, but he was married to Satan, and then Satan divorced, and so the Holy Ghost didn't have anywhere to live, so God said, well, just sit here between me and Jesus, and everything will be just fine. So you're just making this shit up. God damn it. If the 1 mass object plus 4 velocity, then it has 4 plus momentum, and the 4 mass object has 1 velocity, then it has 4 blah, 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 blah. Yes, we could all do that. And the fact is, it doesn't agree with the kinetic energy number. The two things aren't the same. The equalities don't equal each other. God damn it. You can't figure the argument out? The lever says there is no kinetic energy. Why is the lever lying? If the two masses connected by the lever in total have zero velocity, then the two masses always must have opposite momentums. Their momentums always cancel out to zero. So this is more nonsense when they're clearly not canceling because the damn things are moving, for fuck's sake. So obviously whatever they have, it isn't canceling. Okay, but obviously the real truth is those two parts of the force equation are not unequal. And the only thing that's unequal is the lever itself, which by moving keeps shifting a little bit of mass. It keeps shifting mass from one side to the other. But it's in perfect balance. Again, it oscillates perfectly with no weights on it at all, because it's got the same gravitational force on both sides that cancel. So even without weights, that's not the problem. The problem is you say there's 4 times the energy on one side. Well, where's the evidence of 4 times the energy on one side? The momentum on both sides must always be balanced, while it is, I guess that's while. The kinetic energies are 1/2, but do not need to be balanced with each other. So why don't they? How does something have 4 times the energy and somehow it doesn't have to show it has 4 times the energy? It'll just pretend I only have 2 times the energy. I'll just pretend. No, I'll pretend I have the same energy because I'm a good pretender. I mean, what's the fucking point? What's the point of you saying something has 4 times the energy, but the energy is invisible and it's hidden and it doesn't show itself until I want it to? So when I say, please show yourself energy, it will show, but it won't show for you because it doesn't like you because it's spiritual. Oh, it's the living force, and the living force hates you because you're a nasty atheist. Oh, I can't. I just can't believe I have to make these fucking videos. God damn, you people suck. This is religious gibberish. This is not fucking science. Oh, God damn, you people are such fucking slimy cunts. All right. Anyway. The two masses do not need to have the same amount of kinetic energy with each other because it's an oscillator. Where did you get the idea that an oscillator needs to have equal balanced energy? Of course it doesn't need equal balanced energy. Fuck. You keep saying that it can't oscillate if it has twice as much and it has 4 times the energy in this case. Yeah, I keep saying it because it's fucking true. Alright, and this seems to be your main confusion. So I'm the one confused. He thinks an oscillator can have uneven amounts of energy, and I'm the one confused. Alright. The momentum has to be balanced on both sides, but the energy does not have to be balanced on both sides. So I guess I'll just keep that piece of precious nonsense and just say, how the fuck do you people defend that as science? You're just making a declaration. We don't have to balance kinetic energy. Kinetic energy can play by its own goddamn rules because it's magical, spiritual energy. There's no reasonable argument defending this as anything but religion. Alright. I just hate it on this fucking planet of scum. So here's Tan the Man. Hello, I don't mean any disrespect. Fuck you. We already did this. But in your description, you stated that, okay, so this is a different thing. I already did read this. It's off the subject, so I'll delete it now. Fuckers. Let's see. If you are... select anything on purpose. If you are confused and think there's an error with k equals, well, it's k now. It's k. So we did this too. I can assure you that probably have some fundamental misconceptions or misunderstanding. You can assure me, but you can show me zero fucking evidence. You can't show me a single fucking experiment collecting this fucking kinetic energy. Ballistic pendulums can't do it. Cars can't do it. Nothing can collect this shit. Classic physics is a bulletproof and extremely rigorous method of describing classical systems. So again, no evidence. You're just a religion. Okay. I mean, I'm clearly, in this video, I'm pointing out a clear contradiction. Something as fundamental as a lever says there's no evidence of your kinetic energy. I can't find it. It doesn't exist. It's not here. I can't find it. In its essence, it's mathematically very simple and elegant and makes very few assumptions about reality. It just works. I mean, amazing crap. It obviously doesn't work. The lever is not showing any kinetic energy to exist. The Mythbusters crashed cars. They couldn't find any fucking goddamn kinetic energy. Your claims are preposterous in light of your absence of any fucking corroborating evidence. All right, you should try to learn about Lagrangians, right? So this is where they just do something really silly. They just say mass, we're going to call that toop. And then we're going to call velocity winky. So now we're going to multiply toop and winky instead of mass and velocity. That's all it is. It's just a word game, essentially. It's absolute crap. Okay, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't change anything, it doesn't fix anything, and it's just basically, yes, it's mv squared. 1/2 mv squared. It's just 1/2 mv squared written as toop and week. Okay. There's just no point. There's just no point, right? Okay, reach back to me if you want me to solve the problem myself. Yeah, so he just creates a fake circumstance. So I'm just saying it was clear what the video is about. It's about the fact that the lever's definition of equalities is absolutely different than your kinetic energy definition. And you have no experiment. Okay? The lever's an experiment. It's a physical thing. It's doing it. You show me a physical experiment doing your kinetic energy thing. So the lever perfectly proves momentum. You show me your piece of evidence that says the lever's lying. That was your obligation, fuckhead. And you didn't come anywhere fucking close. Alright, so this asshole says draft science mathematics skills extremely poor and basic. Basic addition and multiplication. Well, you'll find nothing else in a Lagrangian, okay? It's just a rewriting of the same formula. Okay, we're adding a couple of nonsense, useless, waste of time features. But it's just the same formula stuck in a different formulation. Same thing. Okay. It's the only thing that he uses and understands. He doesn't understand Lagrangian mechanics. Yeah, I don't understand concepts like mass and velocity are so basic and so easy to understand. Why the fuck would I change their name? Why would I pretend they're not useful as motion and weight? Or more specifically, mass. Obviously, when I give something motion, I give it weight. Okay, you can't have weight till you're moving. All right, he won't attempt to learn it. What's to learn? Again, it's just you claiming 1/2 mv squared is true. It's not you showing it to be true. So what the fuck's to learn? Learn how to be a cheater? Learn how to lie like one of you experts? Okay, and it will therefore say it's baby talk. Well, it's worse, frankly. Go read the Wikipedia page. Go ahead and I mean, I can't tell you what how to make sense out of it because you can't make sense out of it. It's a useless nonsense pile of mush, and that's all it is, mush. I appreciate your attempt, though. I mean, it's 300-year-old mush too. I mean, I think it was written actually before Newton. So Lagrangian, okay, came up with his wacky tutu mukugu theory before Newton published. Anyway, I mean, it might as well just call it living force, and then they might as well call it the spirit god Makuku. I mean, this is all just gibberish and nonsense. It has nothing to do with anything real that we personally experience. It has nothing to do with the fact that we know what momentum is. We feel it, we experience it. Alright. So, I think that's enough. Alright, so I'll post links to this video on these crappy, shitty, irrelevant comments where they didn't come anywhere close to explaining what's the defect in the lever. Why can't it see kinetic energy? Why can't a lever see kinetic energy? Why is it invisible to the lever? Just amazing bullshit. I mean, this goes both ways, right? They claim sometimes there's more kinetic energy and sometimes they claim there's less kinetic energy. So the fact is the lever is going to show things that have a momentum where their theory of kinetic energy is much lower number. And so somehow the lever is showing energy they say isn't there. I mean, come on. It's overtly showing it. It's creating it. I can stop the lever, the things move, they have the energy, and they're claiming you can't have that much energy. You can't have that much momentum, when of course it does. Alright. So, enough of video. This is just so bad. Like I said, I just didn't think the earth was covered with 96% absolute lying scum. I really thought there was something called dignity in intelligence. That you have enough intelligence, you're going to automatically have a certain sense of dignity and honor and integrity. That there's no way to be intelligent and be a scumbag. But apparently I was wrong. They can have a little bit of knowledge, but their core is a religious fanatic, a fucking babbling Muslim. That's all they got to hold on to, is their wooey, sticking their nose up unicorn butt. That's what they live for.